Welcome to Smacky's Garage. Today we're going to be working on the Factory 5 GTM Supercar. Myself, my friend, and the dog are going to be spending time getting it ready for the first start. To be able to do this, we're going to need to get the exhaust on the car. We're going to end up getting the brakes working, so not only are we going to change all the fluids in them, we're going to get the front working, the rear working. We're also going to get the parking brake working so that we don't end up rolling away when we get the car started, and so we can probably move it outside. Then we're going to spend some time getting the fluids changed in the engine, which is right behind me. The reason why we're doing this is because we want to make sure that since it hasn't been started for a long time, in maybe a decade, that nothing's going to go wrong with it. So we're going to turn it over by hand, make sure nothing's stuck, and that everything goes smooth. After we get all this done, we're going to be one step closer to finishing the car and getting it started. So let's go ahead and get into it. Also, this car doesn't really fit. It's extremely low compared to everything else around me. So when we do get this going, I don't know how well I'm gonna fit, and I'm only 5'11". Let's go ahead and let's get this video going. So I got the exhaust pretty much lined up. You can see it's not fully bolted down yet, but the exhaust manifolds come off. They come down to the catalytic converter here. They are attached here to the exhaust that goes out the back. And with this installed, you know, we had to mount it to something. We're having trouble mounting it to here, so we mounted it to the frame itself, but starting to rethink that a little bit now that we're looking at it. You know, we really need to mount this, I think, to the transmission so that if the engine torques itself, that there's no issues with this being stuck to the frame itself and not moving, because that would be a hard point, and nothing else on this is flexible. So we might end up actually taking these out, remounting them here to the transmission to make it so that everything's lined up and it all torques together rather than being stuck. So we ended up going through the brake lines line by line, making sure each one was tight, and then checking and adding fluid to the master cylinders up front. As we were doing that, we ended up pumping the brakes to get the fluid out. We bled the front first and then the rear. There's two different cylinders, front and rear, so we're able to work that way to get them bled. And both fluid is across the entire vehicle right now, the brake fluid. Small leak here in the cable or the hose that connects the right rear, the passenger rear, to the lines coming from the front, but we'll get that fixed. So while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get this fixed and straightened away by getting these U-nuts installed so that we don't have to worry about this coming out again. Take these out. Okay, so I was able to get 2 out of 3 lined up. The other one I'm just going to use a simple nut and hold it in place. Alright, I got 2 out of the 3 in. I'm going to put the last one in with the washer, lock washer, nylock nut, and the bolt, but as you can see, it needs to be drilled out. Nothing's lining up, even if I move it with all the slots. So I don't know if that bracket is perfectly aligned or at the right angle where it should be. So for now, I'm just gonna make it work. We ended up running the lines from underneath. It actually goes under the engine, above the oil pan, and in between the motor mount and the oil pan, there's a piece that gets connected there. And then both lines run from the right rear and the left rear to this passenger side. It was very tight to get in, but brakes are working. So we have front brakes working now, we have rear brakes, and we have the emergency brake. So we should be pretty much buttoned up. Just have to replace that rear right line. And after we replace that, we'll bleed it one more time, and we should be good to go for brakes. Now we're at a good point where I think we can take the engine where we're sitting right now, and we can put some fluid in it, and then we can start turning it over to make sure everything's working. To do that, we're gonna end up taking off the plug wires, pull all the plugs, inspect them, change the oil, and then put a socket on the front of the engine, try to turn it over. So let's go ahead. All right, so we pulled the plugs on the engine. Everything looked good on it. I think the engine only had about 3,000 miles on it when the car was wrecked. So we pulled all the plugs out, we changed the oil. There wasn't much in it, probably less than a quart. Filled it back up with new oil, and then we were able to rotate it by hand, so we know everything is working. We then put the shifter in gear, and we were able to see that not only is the engine spinning freely without the plugs, but also the shifter, the rear wheels were spinning. So we do have power going through the transmission to the ground. I think one of the things that we noticed is the third, fourth, probably fifth gear need adjustment. We're good in first and second, but third and fourth weren't working. All right, so we're gonna be sitting here on the ground because it's a lot easier to sit here rather than to get into the car, especially with the car not having the seats in it yet. So we got a lot done this weekend. The exhaust is on, the fluids are changed, the engine turns over, the brakes are all set now, both the brakes, front, rear, and the parking brake. So we ended up getting a ton done. So this is one good step closer to finally getting the car started, to hear the engine and hear what the exhaust sounds like. Because I don't know, catalytic converters and straight pipes out the back, it's probably gonna be pretty loud and it's gonna sound pretty good. With it being Thanksgiving week, I'm off all week, so I'm gonna be working on the car every single day since my wife is gonna be working. So because of that, I'm gonna get projects done on the 69 Mustang. I have a coolant overflow tank that needs to get installed into it. I have a stereo system that we're putting into it that's not going to upset the original stereo that's in there, but it's still going to allow me to use Bluetooth on the car. On this, we're going to end up doing the cooling system, finishing up the wiring, getting the ignition set up, and then getting one step closer to starting and running the car. On the F-150, we got some tow mirrors that are going to be going on. So we got a lot of videos coming up over the next month that I'm going to be putting out. A lot of them are getting filmed this week while I'm off on vacation, and then I'm going to catch back, and then I'm going to be spending every other weekend working on the vehicles to get everything done. So I'm excited where we are. We got a lot of progress done this weekend. My friend went back home to LA, and hopefully the next time he's here, we're going to have it starting and running. So the target to get it starting, and I'm going to commit to this, is my goal is in the December around Christmas time. Yeah, I'm going to try to get it running before Christmas, but we're going to see where we get to, and hopefully he's going to be here for that so we can all experience it together. I'll make sure we get it on video so we share it here. Thanks for tuning into Smacky's Garage this week. I'll see you next week where we're going to be working on these awesome projects together.